Today we're looking at 5A.2. As I promised, this video will be much shorter. We only have 3 more vocab words to look at. So I can identify methods, I should say, used to study a sample. So we have 3 different methods that study a sample. The first is an observational study. And in an observational study, you collect data. By closely watching and recording behaviors. Now, behaviors is a very general term. If I just watch people walk by and see if they're blonde or not, I'm technically just watching and recording down what's happening, and that's part of just an observational study. A controlled experiment is collect data. We collect data by manipulating one or more factors to see the effects on behavior. And the biggest thing here is most of the times in an experiment you have what you call a control group and an experimental group. So one group you really just watch their behaviors and you don't really change anything, and another group you change something and then watch their behaviors and see how they're different. The control experiment is most often used in medical fields. It's used in everything, but a common example is like medicine. When they're coming up with new medicine, they'll give some people a placebo, so it's just a sugar pill or it just doesn't really do anything, and then they'll give some people the actual medicine they're testing to see if it does what they want it to do. Okay. Then the last one was a survey. This is probably the one we're most familiar with, right? Collect data by asking questions. Right, so if I just go up, I'm not actually observing anything about the behavior. I'm going to go up and I'm going to ask, what did you do last weekend? I don't know, whatever your survey question is. All right, so let's look at some examples of these. For each situation, which type of study method is described? Researchers randomly choose 2 groups from 10 volunteers over a period of 8 weeks. One group eats ice cream before going to sleep, and the other does not. Volunteers were monitoring devices while sleeping, and researchers record dream activity. Okay. So this is an example of an experiment changing the behavior of one group. Right, that's the biggest thing, is I'm actually asking them to change their behavior so I can see what happens. Example 2. Students in a science class record the height of bean plants as they grow. This is an observational study. We're not looking at, we're not changing anything about the bean plants. I'm not asking the bean plants anything, right? All I'm going to do is write down what they are actually doing. Example 3, student council members ask every 10th student in lunch line if they like the cafeteria food. This is a survey. They're actually going down, they're actually asking people something. Right, we can go back to what we did in A, right? This is also a systematic sample and then a survey, right? So every study has 2 parts, right? How are you going to choose who to study, and then how are you going to study them, right? So both, same thing here, right? This one was randomly chosen. This might have been a simple random sample. I don't know, it doesn't really explain enough about it, but they're saying it's a random sample. This was a systematic sample. This one they just did everything. That's part of the parameter. They're doing a census, maybe. Okay. And then example 4, the gardener tests a new plant food by planting seeds from the same package in the same soil and location. Each plant is given the same amount of water, but half the plants are given food and the other half are given no food at all. He records the growth and flowering rates of each plant. And this one is also an experiment because, right, I have one group doing one thing and I'm changing something about the other group. I'm manipulating those factors on them. All right, let's look at our next step. For each situation, which method would you use? So example 5, study of the amount of time college students taking a full course load spend watching television. So let's go through an observational study. I'm probably not going to sit around and watch students watch TV. That seems silly. I'm also not really going to say, like, you do this and you do that and see how much time you're going to watch television. There's nothing about, like, an effect in here. So that's not going to be an experiment. Most likely you would do a survey. Right? You would just walk up to people and be like, hey, how much time do you spend watching TV? That's going to be the best way to get that data. Example 6. Study of how often preschoolers choose gender-neutral toys over gender-specific toys. You could survey preschoolers, I guess, over how often they do those things, but I don't think you're going to get a very good answer from preschoolers about which toy they use. So personally, I would use an observational study for this. Right? Go to a preschool, sit down for the day, maybe, and see what they're doing. Are they choosing what toys? Are they choosing to play with? Whatever. And example 7, study of the effect of a new medicine for heart disease, right? Anytime you're trying to study the effect of something, you're usually studying people who don't take that medicine and then do take that medicine. So those are your 2 groups. So that's an experiment, right? But anytime you really want to do an effect, you want to do an experiment where you are controlling the variables there. Okay. All right, the last thing we're going to look at, which is a large part of setting up a good study, is bias questions, right? So we looked at sample bias, how you could over-represent or under-represent a group, and you don't want that in your study. But how you ask things to people is also could be biased. So we're looking at these questions, and I'm telling you right now these questions are bad, and they are biased, so we want to try and fix them. So these questions are bad. Can you improve them? Number 1, do you agree that being forced to wear your ID at school is unfair? So one of the big things about bias is, like, strong language. So this word forced, that's not a good part of the question. We want very just, like, neutral language is what it's called. So I would say that, do you believe wearing your ID at school is fair? Or do you, even if you said, do you agree, I guess. We can keep that word the same. It doesn't, do you agree wearing your ID at school is fair or unfair? And I would almost add this because a lot of times if you're leading them to an answer, it's a biased question. Like, don't you think it's unfair that we have to do that? Well, so like, yeah, I guess, right? So, like, having them actually have to think about it and answer, yes, I think it's fair, or no, I think it's unfair, can often just already strip away some of that bias. Number 2, why are math teachers better at their jobs than other teachers, right? And this is another part of bias that happens a lot in questions. We're starting with the assumption that math teachers are better at their jobs, and that's a problem. So a better question would maybe, are math teachers better at their jobs? Than other teachers. That spelling got weird. And then even maybe adding a why or why not at the end, or whatever. But before you can make this statement, you have to study it and then say, well, first of all, what did I write here? I got math teachers. Sorry, guys. Mathers. Squish the words together. And then say, okay, if I have reasoning that they are, here it is. If we have reasons that they're not, here it is. And then, why does using a cell phone during class lower student performance on tests? Again, this is another one of these questions, right, where it's already assuming. So, does using a cell phone during class lower student performance? Oh my gosh, I really can't spell today. Okay, so it's always better to have your question like, does this actually happen? Instead of like, already assuming that it happens, and then just asking, why does it happen? Okay. So that's always a big bias. And again, bad language, like, you're forced to wear it. And then most people go like, yeah, I don't want to be forced to do anything. So that strong language, making sure you have neutral language. Okay. There are lots of answers for these types of questions. It's not just what I wrote here. But you want to try to make it as neutral as possible. People don't feel like they have to answer one way or the other. That's what makes a good question. All right, that is it. I'll see you guys on Monday.